Yep, we're doing this again. Last year I reviewed a Thomas fan film titled Tobias and the Half Pariah. I had mixed feelings about it, to say the least. I liked some parts of it, other things about it bothered me, but I had a good time reviewing what was more than a little unusual for me. Some people came to me thinking I was regressing and that I wasn't the man they thought I was, but the reception of the review was mostly positive. Bottom line, it was a fun little distraction. This year though, everything I said against Tobias suddenly seems rather small in light of something that I probably never would have found on my own. It's only thanks to someone commenting on my channel that it was ever brought to my attention. Here's how that went.
Hey Nick, just came by to warn you, whatever you do not watch Zed 17. If you thought Tobias and the Half Pariah was fucked up, trust me, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Too late. So I watched it. And of course I'm reviewing it for Halloween. Also, I guess this means there are swear words in this video now. Yeesh. Seriously though, what I'm about to show you is without a doubt the most violent, dark, and downright demented Thomas fan project I have ever seen in my entire life. The Dark Times has nothing on this in terms of sheer shock value, and I'd be hard-pressed to see someone try to top it with something even freakier. Now before I actually go into Zed 17 and sign my own death warrant, I'm going to give you guys a chance to look into this yourselves. I'll provide a link to the original video in the description, and if you're invested enough to have made it this far in my video and have a little time on your hands, now's your chance to check it out before I spoil everything for you. If you haven't paused this video and clicked on that one by now, check this out! Yep, that's what we're in for, folks. Happy Halloween! What? Oh, never mind, folks, it's just the logo. The video's loading just fine. The movie starts out well enough with a pretty cleanly made twist on the old Thomas and Friends introduction from back in the days when they used model trains and whatnot. The music is unsettling and keeps warbling out as we cut to real versions of all these locations in our present day. One thing about it that confuses me is that there's an American engine in this shot instead of a British one. I mean, it's not like there's any shortage of spooky dead British logos to choose from. Maybe Paul wanted an American engine because it looked grimier or something, I don't know. The whole thing plays out like a documentary you'd find on the History Channel, uncovering horrible secrets of the past that have remained unseen for decades. And in that regard, it's pretty well made. The cutaways to interviews, the clips of past events, if there's anything I can give this project, it's well shot and well paced considering how much happens in it. We begin with the narrator saying that the true story of Sodor and its engines isn't anything like we've been led to believe by Wilbur Awdry's books on the television series. The real story begins with a member of the Nazi Party, this German professor whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, who in the years following World War II claims to have been a low-ranking member who was horrified by the crimes against humanity the Nazis performed behind closed doors, medical experiments and the like, when he was actually the one committing the most heinous offenses of all. You might be wondering, what does this have to do with Thomas the Tank Engine? To which I'd say, everything. I will say I like his design quite a lot. He looks unassuming enough, especially in this kiddie style, but you know there's something off about him. Here's his kid.
After studying under his father, Hans left at the age of 18 and went to university on the mainland, studying biology and engineering, writing several pioneering papers about genetics and the splicing of DNA with mechanical implants.
And just like that, I could see exactly where this was going. If you don't see it, congratulations. You're fortunate enough to still have some shred of your childhood innocence intact, but it won't survive past the end of this video, that's for sure.
He called it biofusion, the technique of manipulating genetic material to splice with mechanical attachments.
Here's his kid, by the way.
Baby Thomas was born in 1968. Throughout the early years of his life, he would watch the growing railway network with fascination.
He couldn't get enough of trains. His dad bought him one of the first video cameras.
Yeah, it's going to be that kind of story. Also, the Fat Controller is a prick.
Oi! Get off my f***ing platform!
Sir Topham Hatt. Born into money, he took his ridiculous name to heart and started wearing a top hat all the time.
Come on, we're gonna be late.
What's the time?
Thomas, get moving.
Young Thomas loved following railway. He'd be out all the time, hoping to catch a new train on his camera.
11:45's coming through soon.
He won't wait for us.
Unfortunately, he didn't take as much notice of the safety signs.
I'm not being late again.
Have we missed it yet? Wait for the 11:45.
Never mind the 11:45.
It must be late again.
Thomas, come on.
It's always held up.
This part actually did make me jump the first time I saw it. I knew he was going to get hit by a train. I even knew exactly where it would come from before he turned back around, but I wasn't expecting it to be going so fast. It's like that bit from Looney Tunes where Wile E. Coyote looks both ways before crossing the road, and then a car flies in like a bat out of hell the second he steps onto it like it was waiting for him. This train just came out of nowhere. No shouting from the other kid, barely a sound from the engine itself, so yeah. Kudos for making such an effective jump scare that it got me even though I thought I was prepared for it. Also, there's Thomas's arm. So the Gertzes bring Thomas's body to Shed 17 and declare it off limits to the public. A year after the boy goes inside, this comes out.
In an open invitation to the people of the island, Thomas rolled out of Shed 17.
It took me a moment to realise what it was I was looking at. When he looked at me and said,
Hiya, Mr. Hartley.
it dawned on me what Hans Gertzer and his dad had done. One woman passed out as Thomas smiled at us. I had to run off round the side of the shed.
Hey, are you alright, Keith?
We then get treated to a series of interviews with Keith, and he blows chunks in every single one anytime someone mentions or even vaguely hints at anything having to do with the incident. As overdone as the gag is, one nice detail I'd like to note is that Keith never upchucks in this most recent interview years after all the others, bits of which are sprinkled all throughout the video. So I guess he got over it. You're probably thinking this is as crazy as things are gonna get, but you're wrong.
Thomas's DNA had been reprogrammed to accept and adapt to the engine structure, using the engine's internal system to maintain his organic functions.
They seriously try to explain all this away, talking about Thomas's organs working in tandem with the engine parts, his DNA fusing with the metal, and how things could go wrong if he started working on the railway. As such, his family forbids it. Then rich people start asking to be turned into trains.
Requests by people from around the world who wish to be biofused into engines.
There were billionaires offering to pay whatever they wanted to be converted into an engine or some other transport.
Sorry, what? Look, I can understand if someone is terminally ill and this is some way for them to live forever, and I can even sort of understand this being a train enthusiast's lifelong dream, maybe. But anyone else? Who the frack wants to be a train? For that matter, who wants to be a helicopter? Yeah, Harold's a helicopter and he can't even fly, because as we see when he attempts to later on, the rotors are connected to his muscles and organs, so when they start spinning around, they tear his guts out. I mean, just being an engine doesn't sound all that exciting. Yeah, you get to go places, but you'd spend the rest of your life basically being used as a pack mule, so yeah. And who would want to be a helicopter that can't fly? You know what you do all day? You just sit in one spot endlessly, being bored. You can't even scratch your nose when it gets itchy. Think of the living hell that would be. Woo! Yeah, this is great! Some, like James, don't even have that much money to pay for the procedure, so they end up signing their life away to be used for slave labor on the railway. I know there aren't a lot of jobs to go around nowadays, but sheesh. The Gertzes refuse to allow this practice, but Sotapum Fat cuts out the middleman and starts turning people into trains himself. There are so many things wrong with this. How'd they stretch out a person's face that much? They'd be like 80 times the size of a normal person. It's probably why their skin looks so dead. And their organs must be huge. Whatever, I'm not going to debate the logistics of this. This is where things start going wrong.
Peep, peep, whistled Edward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Thomas runs just fine without hurting himself, and he's even eventually allowed to work, but most of the others who got turned into engines... Ugh, it sounds just as stupid every time I say it. They start spewing their own guts out. It's even worse with diesels.
The diesel began to burn her internal organs. Everything organic in the engine was soon burning.
Have you ever heard a locomotive scream in pain? We tried rinsing out the fuel tank with water, but by then it was too late.
I always liked Mavis.
Sodor Research began selling the technology to other countries in multi-million-pound deals. These countries would have less qualms about the use of fuel engines, and even the modern electric trains. Even failed biofused engines were being displayed publicly in what would become a kind of freak show.
I think this is my favorite part. It's really clever. It's a nice use of that character. It's not even played up for laughs. It's just funny to me. Then things get really upsetting as Thomas's grandfather commits suicide. This man is made of wood. Things keep going wrong as one engine after another blows up, and then this happens. Aside from Thomas, the only engine that actually works is Henry. Ironic, seeing how sickly he was in the books. Things take a turn for the worst, however, when he gets a peek at what's inside Shed 17. He argues with a fat controller about it, and I'm surprised he doesn't just run over him right then and there. I mean, the guy's practically inviting the danger with the way this room is designed.
That fat shite always hated Henry. He didn't like his cheerful manner, and he clearly had other lifestyle choices when he was a human. Fat wanted Henry away from the other engines, and Kipper Run was a death sentence.
We're treated to clips from the Flying Kipper story, as seen in the TV series, spliced with shots of what really happened that night. We see Sir Topham jamming the points with a rail spike so they'd freeze that way, and after Henry crashes, his crew freezes to death in the snow. Then Henry's sent to be rebuilt. Murdered. Why is this shot giving me Ex Mortis flashbacks? The rest of it plays out like one of Jonan Vasquez's meanwhile skits that he'd always put at the end of his comics. And this is where things get downright gory as we find out that Thomas isn't the little boy who got hit by a train simply inserted into a new body like we thought he was, but a clone. One of many clones, all of which failed except for him. This is why most of the other engines didn't work, is that they had to go back to the drawing board with every single new test subject. And this is where I start scratching my head. Like most of you, I'm sure I never suspected that this could be a clone. Simply plugging Thomas into a machine to keep him alive after his accident implies that they were trying to preserve the original boy. If you could clone him, why not make him a little boy clone? Why make him a giant freaking steam engine? That seems like it would just complicate things and make it 1,000 times harder. Honestly, I'd rather have wheels sticking out of my arms like that one skeleton than be a damn train. I'm not even talking about how realistic this story is, just how it's written. But, whatever. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, the moment when we finally find out just what's lurking in the back of Shed 17, and has been for all these years. Yeah, who else remembers that time they got so freaked out that they jumped out of their own skin?
We stopped asking all the questions we had at first. We were just glad our friend was back with us. He could work for us. He became our servant in a way. Someone who drew in the crowds, helped create jobs, was eager to work. Thomas always thought of us as his friends. Sadly, over time we came to think of him as just really useful.
So yeah, someone felt it was entirely necessary to make this. So after Thomas escapes his own body, he goes through dozens of reconstructive surgeries and is kept on life support for like, ever. The practice of biofusing engines is banned in all countries except China, where prisoners still serve their sentences by being turned into trains and poked in the face with cattle prods. And now to end this story the only appropriate way I can think of. What a spectacle that was, huh? Just when I thought I was done talking about Thomas forever, after I made my big statement spurred on by Tobias and the Half-Pariah, and just when I thought the Thomas fanbase couldn't get any weirder, a gem like this comes along. I mean, it's not like the whole thing about the trains with faces being people hasn't been done before. I'm sure it's been done lots of times. It's the first thing people jump to, but Paul is probably the first to go the extra mile and actually put that idea to film. And as shocking and bizarre and disturbing and mean as it is, it's actually kind of awesome. Let's look at this for what it is. It's a creepypasta. It's a stupid creepypasta, but a fun one that is well thought out enough all the same. Many of the beats are fairly predictable, but the way they're pulled off, the way Paul goes all the way with it is something else. Needless to say, I had fun. I feel bad now for being as hard as I was on times in this Tobias film, but I guess the reason that bothered me more than this did was because it was a clear, earnest attempt at making a Thomas story. And as one, it just didn't jive with me, mostly because of the way my mind works. I look at this thing though, and yeah, it's something I never knew I wanted, but I did, and I got it. A lot of the production values really are terrible, especially the models of the engines themselves. I don't know what program he was using to make these shots, but dang, if only he'd used one of the other better programs people typically do with these sorts of things. Maybe I'm spoiled. Then again, I don't know if that would have made some of these shots harder to set up or not. Now and then it'll work in the film's favor, weirdly transforming the world into a nightmarish state, like the sort of thing you've lived through, but then you relive it in your dreams and it ends up being a little different and even scarier than the real thing was the first time. As for shots involving the human characters, this is where the production values start to shine. He's still pretty limited by the tech he has to work with, but the simple use of a few filters and good camera angles, things sliding around in the foreground and background, and a healthy amount of photo manipulation make these shots work. And the way the story is told, all the cutaways and interviews and narrations, it's pretty straightforward and easy to follow. And on a personal note, I appreciate the runtime. It's about as long as a documentary made to fit into an hour on the air would be, and it keeps the pace going. They could have made this a long drawn-out movie or something, but nope, they kept it short and sweet, just long enough to work and do everything it needed to without overstaying its welcome. It is what it is. So, yeah, despite everything it has going against it, I got a kick out of this production. It's silly, it's gruesome as can be, but it's still pretty engaging for what it is. It's the kind of thing I like to see this time of year. I wasn't going to make any more videos about this sort of thing, since Freaky Thomas fanfictions are a dime a dozen on the internet and you'll sooner trip over one before you actually go looking for it, but this raises the bar of just how freaky they can be. I can't speak for Paul and say whether or not it was worth making, but I just had to review it. Check it out if you like creepypastas. Everyone else, you've probably had enough of this just from watching my review of it. But hey, I hope you had fun. That's all for now. Still got those Sonic re-reviews and maybe another Halloween video coming up. Toodles!